And then I just like brought her into a big embrace, and she was just like, and I'm like, no, we're just getting to the good part. Don't worry. And then she was like squirming, and I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, and
Two
then
more seconds.
yeah, it's coming. It's coming. I promise. And like my girlfriend was just watching and like laughing because she knows this person's personality, and it was very funny for her to be involved in that situation. And yeah, and eventually we did get there, and her response was like, actually, yeah, that was good.
Weird and Worthwhile podcast.
I haven't actually watched any of our podcasts or meeting videos, but I'm kind of afraid to. But
In my mind, they're pretty good. You're right. I haven't watched them yet either.
yeah, we're always hypercritical when we listen to our own
Yeah, pretty much
voices.
everyone's hypercritical of themselves anyway. So
But that's how you make gains. It's like listening to yourself talk.
yeah, it if with the right attitude, it could it's a process of self reflection and could be self improvement. So probably worth doing. And it probably does sound kind of weird. I've listened to some interviews that I've done with other people, and I thought I was pretty happy with how I sounded and was for a good chunk of it. There's a little
I
bit
have
of stumbled words when I'm too much up in my head, but other than that, it's pretty good.
I have a theory that we create our own voices, and it's not just like some genetic thing that we get. We can actually change them and develop
Mm.
accents if we just pay
I think you're,
attention.
that's a very fascinating thing because I'm actually really good at permuting my voice. I always have been. And I just remember it. Well, I don't quite know when I started doing it, but I just remember when I was actually starting to just starting to try to pick up girls when I was like 16 or something. And I noticed what my voice did without even really trying. My voice just became this like richer, like smoother voice. And it was just like, hello. How are you? How are you? Like, good. How isn't it a nice night here? I was like, that isn't even it. I can't even do it. But it was just, it happened naturally. It was this dropping into like a lower, more like there was more vibration going on in my throat. It was just
Oh.
yeah, it was kind of like this. It was sinking back into the back of the throat. And it was like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I like the sound of that. Yes, what a pleasant evening we're having here. It's just like it's more of this like using your throat as like an instrument which is vibrating and that resonance, I don't know, was I felt like it would be attractive and I think it was. Just like and I mean that in more than just like a that's hot, like in like an actual like letting people feel my sound waves sort of thing. And maybe some of that was non-genuine, but some of it I think is just like that could be one of my real voices. I think it kind of is. And sometimes it happens more naturally. And I noticed that there are different voices. Like my voice can be kind of more shallow or more high pitch when I'm not very comfortable or when I'm like around maybe when I'm really like brought back into some earlier like childhood sort of thing, like I'm at like a family reunion or something, and then my voice is just kind of like like maybe not quite that, but it's
Right.
there's less richness to it. It's more, it's less confident. It's less full. There's less of me there because I'm kind of holding myself back from it, or I'm trying to relive some old version of whatever that was. But yeah, there's so many different voices that are all probably real for us, and we have a lot of agency in which one we're using.
So right now my microphone is set to the camera microphone. I'm gonna switch it to the USB mic and tell me if it's better.
All right. Does that sound any different?
It sounds remarkably better.
Okay. Fuck. I started with the wrong mic, of course. All right, that's okay. We caught it. What you reminded me of was I'm going to a family reunion, and I need to book the flights, but there's always a little hesitation, like going to like big family events. You're gonna see all these people who've like known you since you were a child, and like you don't see them very often, and um, it's like, dang, I'm gonna kind of get dragged back into that like
Hmm.
past self, or it's
Yeah,
like, who am
well,
I gonna
people are going to
be?
expect you to be that
Who do they
person.
expect me to be? Who am I gonna just like randomly become when I get there? And it's like it's not even like anything bad's gonna happen, obviously, but like it's just like the uncertainty and like kind of almost the lack of control about like what your voice is going to do.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a certain like those old triggers are really strong. And I remember there's this line that really always sticks out at me. This woman I studied yoga from, who's actually Tommy's wife, and she's great, and she's a great yoga person. And she's has a very, very strong yoga practice, and she's like super involved. She's like doing these like hour-long meditations every day or whatever it is, and like very, very strong personal discipline applied yoga. And something she said to us was, for all of the personal growth and development that I've done through yoga, I still like I still can't be myself when I'm around my parents or something like that. Or just
Yeah,
like be around your parents for 3 days and all the old shit still comes out and you're just like,
it's
oh,
incredible, dude. Yeah,
those
for
roots
me,
are in
it's
there.
like 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, probably a lot less. Yeah, but it's just like there's that thing where they're expecting you to be a certain person, and then without even really wanting to, you kind of step into that role, and you're just like, oh, this is a very familiar role where they have all the power and they have the authority, and I'm just the subservient person. You know, I'm the less than in a certain way. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
it's a fascinating thing.
right. It's amazing. Like someone I just heard some stand-up comic the other day, like make a joke, like saying like you have to go to your dad's house. Oh, I don't know. That was like with the punchline of whatever joke he was like, oh, you're like that's almost as bad as going to your dad's house. Like just pointing out that like, dude, like when you're around your parents, like it just like brings up old patterns. It's just uncomfortable. Um, yeah. It's like how many people like really have like a great relationship with their parents? I feel like it's less than half.
It's less than half. I even feel like mine is pretty good, but it still is not like it's cordial. Let's give it that. It's cordial, it's pleasant, they're very supportive, they're very loving, but there is a disconnect between the person who I am and who they think I am. That still exists.
Yeah.
And that is probably the source of what we're talking about here.
So I wonder like historically, like because I don't know the pre-internet world. I only know the internet world, but like before there was like even like phones. I mean, I feel like people would like kind of like leave their parents when they were became an adult and they could when they had whenever they had the means to leave, they would probably leave pretty soon after.
Mhm.
And then that was it. It was like see you once a year type
Yeah,
deal.
yeah, like once a year, or maybe now I live somewhere else and it's once every couple of years. And
Yeah.
just
Or
like,
maybe
and
it's
that's
like
it.
I'll write you a letter if I can afford to buy paper, some shit like that. Like,
Yeah, it's
but
like this
now
is
it's
our
like
communication
your
now.
parents can just like spam text you whenever they impulsively decide to send you some photo or something. And it's like, maybe I don't want you texting me because I just don't want that. I don't know. Maybe I don't want to talk to you more than once a year. I don't know.
Maybe once a year is a healthy balance, even in like a good relationship with one's
That
parents.
yeah, that it's important to note that I had this the other day was Mother's Day and my mom like wants to get together and do all this stuff and I'm like, okay, we'll do that. And then because I realized like the point of Mother's Day is like, talk to your mom, hang out with your mom. And then the other 364 days, you don't have to do that. So,
Yeah, it's like let's really knock it out of the park on that one day a
yeah.
year, and then let's go our separate ways for 364, and then we'll come back and do it again.
I actually really like letters. I think letters are underrated and underutilized because it's so much more meaningful than text.
Hmm.
It's like it's more meaningful and also you can't just like impulsively do it.
Yeah, and it's there's a greater permanence to it. Like the text will eventually just
Right.
be lost in the wash of all the old text, whereas the letter exists and it has a physical form and it goes somewhere. And then just like maybe you pull it out again, or maybe you encounter it again.
And you're not gonna like handwrite like some some shit message
No,
like
you're not gonna shit post in written
and
form.
like fold it up and pay money to like send it. No,
Yeah.
you're probably gonna think twice before you send a a crappy written LOL.
Yeah, you're just doing a little like a meme sketch. It's just like just drawing a little sketch of the meme. It's just LOL, and then you pay like $5 postage and that's the person.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's funny. I mean, like you have to like buy an envelope and a stamp, and it's only $1, but like just that little bit of friction like is enough to like make
Yeah.
you
Well, it's also more of a process. It's involving
right.
your
I
energy.
guess
You're going to the store, you're getting the
right.
postage, you're putting it together with your hands, you're infusing some of your energy into it, whether you wanted to or not. And it's not just this like flippant doop, doop, doop.
And like think about like the difference of like mindset you're in when you're on your phone versus when you're like doing something like handwriting.
Mhm.
Like when you're on your phone, I don't know about you, but like I get into this kind of almost like phone frequency where I'm just like kind of like a neurotic little robot, just like notifications, blah blah blah, like Facebook, fuck this person, like, and then I send a text to my parents, like, so, but when I'm
Yeah.
like writing in my journal and then like writing a letter, it's a different vibe.
It's a very different vibe. Yeah, it's almost the difference between just like watching something on the internet and reading a book. It's like those are two very
Yeah,
different things as well.
yeah, you're
One
right.
of them is actually involving your own imaginative faculties and yourself in the process, and the other is you're just kind of removing yourself from the inner experience and just observing something just happening over here. So one of them I think is involves more of you.
Yeah, I feel like another comparison is like emails versus phone calls in terms of like
Hmm.
getting stuff done. Like for some people, like email is not the way, especially if like you don't know them well. They just assume that your emails are like passive aggressive or something.
Yeah, oh, no, email is so inferior. I've I went into this yoga studio and it was kind of a Mercury retrograde moment, and which is like this period of astrological time, a couple weeks a year, where communication doesn't happen that well. And I went in, and it was like I was trying to promote the event that I was doing, but I got the wrong idea about what their ability to do that was, and I was talking to the wrong person. Anyway, it was this whole thing, and I think I maybe didn't leave the best impression there. But I went back in again, and I was like, okay, now I actually have something else I want to talk about, and it's this other event, this like dance that I want to host here. And the first time I went in, I was talking to two people without even really meaning to. I just walked in, and these were the first two people. One of them was the owner, the other one was the administrative person who's allowed to make executive decisions, and they were just the people I was talking to. And I was like, well, that was easy. I just walked in the door, and I'm talking to people, and we can get things done. And
Oh
the next time
yeah.
I went in, and I actually had a plan of I wanted to know the answer to some questions. I talked to this person who had no administrative authority, and they were like, oh, "Okay, well, here's an email. Send us the email." And I'm like, no, I don't
No.
want to do that. I want to speak to a human just like I did like 2 days ago, where actually something could come of that. And I actually did email them, and the response was, I can't make that decision. I'm going to pass the message along to the person who can. We'll get back to you next week. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, this is so wildly inefficient. I could have walked into your office and spoken to you for 2 minutes and it would be done instead of this like strange back and forth through text that is like not even talking to the right person. Like, how inefficient is that?
Yeah. Yeah, I was applying for jobs like and I was like, submitting applications and sending emails and just like getting like all kinds of like automated responses and corporate emails and like had to fill out the same form like 4 times. And I'm like, finally, I just drove to the company, walked in the back office, went to the HR lady and said, hey, I'd like a job here. And they're like, yeah, you look pretty good. Sounds good. Like,
We'll take it. Yeah, come on
yeah,
in.
like I don't think she even like I'm not even sure I filled out an application or like submitted a resume. She was just like asked me a couple questions, everything checked out. Like I mean it was just like a basic job. Like, you just gotta like look good and like pass the drug test and but it was like it was like weeks of like bullshit emails and then just like all I had to do was just go in there and just talk to someone face to face and they had all the information they needed just by really looking at me asking a couple questions and then sign the form, and then that was it.
Yeah, well, it's a world of difference because then they can actually see and experience you as a human. It's like I applied for this job, I think it was like a year ago or something. And as I was applying to it, I'm like, I am the best candidate they could ever hope to get for this
Hmm.
position. Like, I am honestly like the top 1% of 1% for that of their applicants. And then I never heard back from them. And I'm like, they did not understand who they're passing up on.
Right.
It was like this aftercare program for people who have just come out of treatment. And I'm already a recovery coach. And it's already
Right.
pretty much what I'm doing. And I was willing to do it for them if they would give me a few clients at like less than the rate that I'm usually charging, just so I could flesh out like the hours that I'm not using. And I'm like,
Gotcha.
okay, you guys are getting a fantastic deal here. And yeah, I just didn't hear back from them. And I'm like, if I had just spoken to a
Yeah,
human, they would have
for sure.
understood. Then they would have actually understood what was happening here.
Yeah, it's the best way. If you want to get a job, just walk into the store, say to wherever it is, just go there when they're open, talk to an employee, put on your best clothes, your best smile, and say, "Hey, my name is this. I like what you guys are doing here. I'd like to be a part of it. If you have an open position, I have experience." And so it just works. And yeah, no, I'm curious to hear like so before you were doing addiction recovery, like what kind of work were you doing?
Well, I did a number of things. I was just working in a medical clinic for a little while, just doing some administrative work. And that was just kind of some basic stuff. And I was a lifeguard in my 20s, all through
Nice.
the summer. So that was a great
You look
job.
like a lifeguard.
Yeah.
I'm sure the
Yeah.
chicks were digging you.
It was a very nice job. You had a lot of downtime and you got paid to work out and you got to be in the sun. And
Nice.
yeah, I did that for quite a few years and that was a nice thing. And I was a camp counselor when I was younger. So just like working at summer camps, I did that at a few different summer camps.
Cool.
And that was fun because that's kind of a community oriented thing. So there's a lot to love about that because you're just with a group of people for the summer and you get to know them a bit better and you get to do some work related things, you get to do some play related things. And yeah, it's just a nice container. And something about it for romantic relationships, if you're going into it single, is very fun too, because then you're just like, here I am among a limited pool of people. Like,
Dude, yes.
and it's just like, these are your options. You got me, and you
Right.
got these like four other guys here. Like, what do you think?
Things can escalate quickly when there's a limited pool and you're with the person every day for like over a week.
Yeah, and it did in both situations. But yeah, it's just that something about that is it makes this situation easier. It's almost like what we were talking about before about this, like the dating market, and there just being too many options, and there being like too many people and too many things. It's like if it was just simplified, and if it was just
Right.
like these are your five suitors, these are your options, you are together for the next 3 months, and then that may be the end of things, and like who knows?
So 100% like there's too many virtual options and not enough in person like day after day meeting someone. Um but you really have to like meet someone and do stuff with them in person like multiple times in a row and then you really start to get comfortable with them in person. And if you know their temptations, then it's just the obvious choice. But if you just have so many temptations on your phone and your apps and your Instagram, and like you have all these expectations set by all these videos you watched, and then you're only seeing someone like you only like see in person people like once in a while, it's just like messed up. But
Yeah, and you're missing the nuances of the person too. It becomes too
right,
much of this like these are the person's credentials, and it's like they are this tier of attractiveness, they are this tier of athleticism, they are these are their interests, how many of them are aligned, they are a cat or dog, check the box like person.
right. You
uh,
overanalyze, and
yeah.
at the end of the day, like it just matters like if you have like this similar values, like, and you can work with the person.
Hmm.
um like obviously it's like fun to just like have that like falling in love thing where like and like if the person's really attractive and stuff, but really like if you're interested in like a long-term relationship, which I don't know how many people are, but if you are, I mean, what I think is probably important is just that you have similar values and you can work with them. Like if you're gonna live with them, if you're gonna like potentially raise children with them, you need to be able to like work with them. Like, and that just comes down to like work style and communication. So anyways, I like researched, like the divorce rate's pretty high in America. It's like most marriages end in divorce, which I guess is fine, whatever. But I saw the stat that was like arranged marriages have like a 3% divorce rate, which I thought was just wild. But I think that one of the reasons is because people who are doing an arranged marriage, you know, probably don't really do divorce. Like that's not socially acceptable in their community.
No.
Um,
Yeah,
but
because there's a
anyways,
bigger expectation about what that even is. So it's like you're not just disappointing your spouse when you divorce them. You are disappointing all of the parents on both sides that got
right.
everything going and all of the extended family. And there's some sort of cultural condition that you don't even do that at all. So yeah, but in on the good side of it, it's more of a reason to actually push through some of the stuff that might otherwise cause people to split, which is really just actually some work for that couple. And it's like some
Right.
people are just like, okay, we're done because it got tough. And it's like,
Well, yeah.
yeah, that might have just been something that made you a better couple if you actually gave it a little bit of attention and you were both willing to look at it and move through it.
I think like if you're doing like an arranged marriage, like that probably means like both the families are involved and like just simply having the your extended family there, this like whole community there to kind of like support the marriage is probably like a big thing
Mm-hmm.
as well. But I saw this guy he's kind of like a professor who quit academia to do his own kind of intellectual pursuits on the internet. He has like a writing course. His name is Justin Murphy. He has a podcast called The Other Life. And I saw one of his projects is uh arranged marriages in America, like for your more or less like your average person. Basically, what he's saying is dating markets are so broken. Um, it's hard to start relationships, and there's people out there who are interested in marriage but are having a hard time finding other people who are interested in marriage. So he set up this arranged marriage thing, and I don't know how it's going, but I would be down to sign up. Not maybe not right now, but I'm not opposed to being a part of an arranged marriage so long as I could veto the person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not going to be like forced into a marriage with a horrible person, but
But you're willing to have some candidates presented and be
right,
like,
some candidates presented, and as long as they are like good enough, like if we're valued align, like I value honesty and like you know children and like courage and like mindfulness. Those are my values. Their values are similar, and we can communicate well, and we can work together to like do projects and stuff. I mean, what more can you really ask for? It really.
yeah, that's very well put. And yeah, I think there's some different camps of people. We live in an era of a lot of media. And in all that media, there's a lot of presentation of you have a true love, or there's like one person that you're supposed to find, or there's one person you're supposed to be with. And this can kind of perhaps create an idea in people's mind that is too specific about the person. And they may even overlook the person in their efforts to find the person. So it can
I
be like
got you.
confusing in that way. But yeah, this kind of having an understanding like what you're talking about is like these are the values of a human that I'm interested in. That will make that person very visible to you, and
Right.
you will notice them when you find them. You'll be like, oh, you have the things. this is very good. We can work with this. And that openness and that lack of specificity towards something is also kind of what I wanted to say about the arranged marriage situation, which is that in the arranged marriage situation, they're doing it because of their family. They're doing it because it's expected of them. And they're going into it with the understanding that they might not particularly like everything about this person. That is a part of their expectation. They're just like,
right.
well, I hope there's some good things in here because I'm in it now. So I hope there are some good things. I know there will be some bad things. Whereas a lot of other people, when they're approaching a relationship, they're just looking for it to be all good things. And then when one bad thing comes out, they're like, oh no, 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 no. We can't have any bad things in here. This is the end. This is
Sure,
the end of
yeah.
business.
I heard someone say that, in the modern era, we think of partners as like concubines. Like there's this person who has to like please us. And like, it's like, no. The traditional view is like, it's just someone you can work with to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I've had this discussion with my partner, and there's just this like that's one of the beliefs that she's been dissolving as we've been together, which is this idea of like, you better take care of your man or someone else will. And it's just like, that's a very concubine oriented like thought process. It's like, you have obligations here as a girlfriend. It's like, you have to do the things or else the man will go away. It's like, can't it just be for its own sake and like lovely and something that both people want? And it's just like, it's a good thing, as opposed to this sort of like, these are your obligations in relationship. And that's just, I don't know where that idea exactly comes from.
Mm,
Maybe it just comes from like the patriarchal society or something. But the relationship that I'm really interested in is one where both people are not trying to live out some form of the idea about what is expected of them in relationship, but instead it's just two people who really like being around each other, who are kind of making it up as they go and
right.
making it unique to the two of them as much as possible.
I mean, I think that's what you just described sounds pretty ideal, but I don't know how like often like that kind of happens. Like I know at least for me, like I love that idea of like two people who just love being around each other and they just make it up as they go. But at the same time, I'm attracted to this idea of like there's very clear obligations and like you have clear responsibilities. Like everything's just like laid out. All right, here's what I bring to the table. Here's my responsibilities. Here's like kind of like the rules and like guidelines. Like you need to text me at least once a day. Like I actually want this shit like written down because I'll fuck it up if it's not.
Yeah, well, I'm sure like there are different types of people. There are the ethereal hippie types that want no rules, and then there are the more pragmatic types who are like, I want it all laid out. And I think everyone benefits from some allotment of each of those categories. So it's not just pure pragmatism, but there's actually some passion and some interest there too. But you're right. It's like, especially as a man, we want to understand, or at least I do. What do you want?
Yeah, what are
What
the
do you want me to
expectations
do? And
here?
then like,
Like I can meet, I'm confident I can meet any expectations. I just don't know what they are.
yeah. Well, that has been the thing. And this has actually been the growth of my relationship over the course of the last like 6 months, has just been the emergence of actual honesty about what wasn't working. And then that's been presented and it causes a challenge. But then now that I have that information, I can begin to do the things to address that problem. And then I have done that. And then that is just something which has been very impressive to my partner. They're like, you actually did something about it. I'm like, yes, if only
All
you had
right, well
told me
now,
about this
what is
earlier,
this
I could have
thing
done it
you're
then.
you're kind
And then,
of
but
beating
I
around the
guess
bush here?
exactly. But like in her defense, that actual honesty about certain things like this didn't go well in the past. In fact, it led
Oh,
to
okay.
almost like chaotic, like very egocentric, like blow ups of everything.
Do you have any
Whenever
like kind of like specific examples? Because Just curious. If you don't want to share it, then
Well,
I
let's just
understand.
like maybe anything related to like bedroom activity. Apparently, that those discussions did not go well in the past at all. Like the male ego is very easily bruised around anything,
Oh,
any
got you.
sort of performance related issues, or not issues, but like any sort of guidance in that arena is like some men are not ready for criticism in that regard, or alterations of anything, and they're just like,
Oh,
yeah, I mean,
I see.
yeah, I don't know the details other than that it went
Okay, so
very,
she,
very
your
poorly.
girlfriend's saying that she had past sexual partners who are not up to par, and she's working with you to like make things awesome. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, well, like that now in our relationship, we can actually talk about what's working and what isn't and make it better. And
Great.
it's becoming better, a lot better, and which is
That's
great
funny.
for everyone. But it's like in the past, she didn't have the option to address things that weren't working because to do so would be this like explosion of emotion and probably perhaps even the dissolution of the relationship outright in certain instances.
Hmm. Well, I don't have that problem. uh, all right. So, do you have anything else you want to elaborate on for us around your relationship and how it's
Well, I now
grown?
I feel like I might be oversharing without really her consent, so I may just leave it there for now.
Here, all right. Well, we'll timestamp that to get consent.
Yes, I
All
think she's
right.
probably okay with it, but I do like, any sort of speaking for other people does need to be a little reined in, I guess,
Yeah.
especially when it's being broadcast to a big audience.
To our massive audience of millions around the world.
Well, just the million. Once we have hit the million subscribers, they're going to be like, "How did it all start? What was it all like back at the beginning?" And then they'll come back and watch the opening episodes, and they'll be like, "Wow, so this is it, the grassroots."
um, cool. So one thing my like just on that note of like it's saying what you want, um, saying what you don't want is probably helpful too, right?
Hmm. Oh
So
yeah.
my buddy Paul Millard, he wrote The Pathless Path, and he talks about carving his own path in life really. And he says one of the exercises he did was say what is a miserable life for me, and he writes that down. What does my miserable life look like? What are the actions that would get me there? So then he knows exactly what not to do.
Mm. That is a good exercise. That's a very good exercise. Yeah, because a lot of these like manifestation or future authoring stuff are very focused on what will I do? What is it? But I think you're right. There's definitely a place for talking about what is it I don't want and what gets me there. And then when I'm beginning to do those things, I can catch myself or I can notice it. And then I'm just not operating with zero awareness and going through the motions of my life and then wondering why I'm not making any progress or forward momentum or whatever it is.
And then once you like define that fear, it's helpful. So then uh you know what you're afraid of and you've written it down, so at least you know what to avoid. And so he writes in the third person. He writes, Paul is still committed to the pathless path, which draws skepticism from other people. He has a couple of kids, but is barely making ends meet and is ashamed. He goes a few months every year without income and is filled with insecurity about his finances almost all the time. He's too stubborn to take a full-time job, and instead admitting he might be wrong about his approach to life. He angrily tweets about how stupid everyone is working the traditional jobs. It's all complicated by ongoing health issues, which limits his energy and leaves him semi bedridden. So I thought that was like very insightful. That he knows that what he's doing might not work, and he doesn't want to be too stubborn about it. And so he really just wants to be flexible and have good health and be making money. And so it's cool.
Yeah, it's good to lay it out like that. And I think especially around fears that people have, the more we can actually bring it to the surface and name it and speak about it and identify actually what it is, the less of a hold it has on us and the less it's
Right.
ability to influence our actions subconsciously or unconsciously. Because very often the thing that we're afraid of doesn't actually have a leg to stand on in reality. It's just our own projection about what it could be and what we think it is. And so when we actually are able to become clear on it like that, it's just like the same sort of thing whenever we find ourselves procrastinating or failing or having some trepidation on taking a big step or a big action. There's a similar thing or an exercise that I've gone through before, which is write your worst case scenario for how this turns out. Like, what is the absolute worst way that this could end? And typically, the way that that goes is like, I am bankrupt, I am destitute, I'm on the street, and then like I commit suicide, or like, you know, I die. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, like how likely do you think that is to happen, and how likely do you think the other, like your projection of it going well is to happen? And typically, it's like, well, it's not going to go that bad. It's
I
like,
guess like yeah, my only argument against these kinds of strategies, but you definitely don't want to do it too often because then you're just giving too much energy towards this negative like
yeah,
scenario.
yeah,
If you don't balance it out with like positive visions and like actions to get to your actual dream. Like if you just keep outlining like shit scenarios that you don't want to end up in, well, that's probably where you're going because you
yeah,
don't have anywhere else
yeah,
to go.
yeah. That's probably where you're going. Well, for me, I think it is valuable to do these kind of shadow work or negative projection things because for many years I leaned into the light full on, and it just like, you know, the flip side of that, which is like you're going to create whatever it is you give your energy to. So just give your energy and your attention to the things that you do want, and just lean into the goodness and the light and the like uplifting feeling and gratitude and all of this. And that's wonderful. But if you go too hard in that direction, you can kind of become a little delusional. And
For sure.
and
So
it can kind of, you can begin to ignore some things that are like the elephant in the room, and it's like you should probably look or talk about this piece too. So it's a
right.
balance once again.
I was just reading Gabor Mate in the book The Myth of Normal. He or maybe it was a different one of his books. He has a bunch of books and he basically says like if you lean too hard into like positivity and positive thinking and basically if you repress the negative emotions, it can actually result in like immune system dysfunction.
Mm.
And he actually says negative thinking can help resolve immune problems like autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Like just basically, you know, letting those negative emotions and that negative energy kind of express itself so it's not all trapped inside and then your self is attacking itself.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, you definitely, emotion is energy in motion. That's what Guru Singh says. And I love that because it's like emotions want to move. They don't want to just be ignored and stuffed down because then they just get stuck in the tissues of the body and then we have problems. That is not good
Right.
for the system. So yeah, at the very least, you at least want to allow yourself to feel very uncomfortable emotions without analysis and just give them enough space to be felt and experienced. But yeah, perhaps even further than that, maybe they deserve a little bit of your time as well, where you actually entertain them somewhat and are just like, okay, this is a day for some of the unwanted feelings. And we just go
Yeah.
through it and we just kind of explore that and give that a moment of time and but not too much. And then
Right.
back to the rest afterwards.
Yeah, you gotta like let the emotions come through. Like let the depression happen for a little bit, but just don't get stuck there.
Yeah. Well, I think well, some definitions of depression are just that it's an ongoing state of affairs. So like you can
Right.
be
Well, there's like capital D depression, and then there's lowercase depressions.
okay. Okay.
Depressions, plural, are something that's perfectly natural.
All right. Yeah. Well,
Uh,
let's have a few depressions, but not the
for
big.
sure. Right. You don't want to get stuck in that multi-month. If it's over a month, you're probably in trouble.
Yeah. You require a pretty big shift at that point. Time to
I
get
remember,
time to
I
get
remember
those paddles that they jolt people back to life with.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Oh man. It's true, man. I work with some people who come to the bike park and they have like depression. Like I can tell, like they're just so low energy and they can barely ride a bike. And it's just like it's like there's no electricity flowing down their spine or in their
Mhm.
body, and it's like
Mhm.
it's so hard. But I try and tell them like you're on the path, keep going. Like this is only gonna get easier. Like it's all downhill from here. Like we're at a bike park with a chairlift.
Mhm.
We're gonna go up and it'll be downhill.
Well, there's this interesting concept through Ayurveda that I learned about when I was at this retreat in the Bahamas at this ashram for a little bit. And I just did a little 1 week course on Ayurveda. And it's this system of medicine or system of wellness, which has been around for a long time and still practiced in certain parts of the world, like India. And even when like a doctor comes to see you in India, he'll have two bags. He'll have his Ayurvedic bag and he'll have his Western medicine bag, and he'll be like, "Which one do you want?" Like, I can do both. And you're like, "I want the antibiotics. I'm very sick." Like, okay, we got the Western medicine bag. And it's like, I want to achieve wellness without necessarily much pharmaceutical intervention. It's like, okay, we go with this bag. Um, so one of the things that they were talking about were these doshas, and the doshas are, I think they're called the doshas. I might be saying that wrong, but tamas, rajas, and sattva. These are considered to be the three predominant types of energy that a person can exist within. Tamas is this like muddy, sticky, slow energy. That's kind of the energy of addiction. That's kind of when you're like, or depression, when you're not really, you don't have much to work with. You're kind of like, it's very tricky to make a move. It's very slow. It's very like tired. The next one is rajas, which is the energy that most of the working world exists in. It's this caffeine energy. It's this go, 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 do things. It's a human energy, but it's also like the emotions of humanity, like anger and like conflict, social conflict, and like all of those things. And then finally, the next one is sattva. And sattva is kind of this more balanced attachment energy or angelic energy where you are not so caught in the problems, and it's a calm space, and it's kind of serene, and it's very nice to be there, and it's you have a bit of a bird's eye view on the things that are happening, and you can participate in them without so much like revved up involvement. But one of the key insights from this is that apparently you have to move through rajas to get to sattva. So when a lot of people are in like depression or when they're in addiction, sometimes the solution that's being proffered to them is like a sattvic solution. So it's this serene, like calm state of their mind or world that they're being offered. And apparently you have to go through rajas to get to sattva. So those sattvic solutions kind of fall short and they don't really provide meaningful value to the person. And they're like, you should just get over it. You should just stop worrying about it and like become detached from your problems. And like that, apparently, at least through this view of Ayurveda, is not really going to happen very well. You need to get into like the like let's go go go, let's do some, get the energy moving sort of thing, in order to get there. And that's why solutions like Kundalini yoga, like intense, vigorous Kriya, like those, like
Right.
breath of fire, like those active things are
Yeah.
actually going to charge you up and give you enough to do something with so that then you can reach the state of serenity. And this is even just in my retro analysis of, one of the things that works for people who have like suicidal depression, uh, is electroshock therapy.
Right. That's like this extreme thing. Like when you
Yeah.
think about it, it's very extreme and it does work, but it just to me seems like there's got to be a slightly less extreme
Oh,
version.
there's got
And
to be a
there
less
is.
extreme version. We never would have even known that that was a solution if it wasn't happening during a period where medical ethics was compromised, or like,
Right.
they wouldn't be doing that as an option. Now, they wouldn't have started the trials to figure that out now because we would consider that too unethical. But, and also, they don't know what the mechanism of action for why it works is. They're just like, oh, it works, and we do it, and it seems to work for suicidal depression, but we don't know how. It's like, maybe this is how. Maybe what I'm just talking about is how.
Yeah. But it's like, there's so many other kind of extreme but not as extreme things you could do, like 35-degree ice bath for five
Mm,
minutes. that type of that'll shock you,
That'll shock it real good.
But how about, fasting? How about Osho's dynamic meditation? You know, that's pretty extreme, but it's not as extreme as electrocuting your entire brain. Um, so the difference is, and this is one of the differences that I think makes it more appealing to Western medicine, is that you can charge a lot of money for electrocuting someone's brain, and it's kind of like a quick fix. And I don't know how much people are going to pay to do an ice bath, or pay for so anyways, but I'd rather pay for an ice bath than pay to have my brain electrocuted. That's just me.
I'm right there with you. Yeah. I was in a bit of a funk earlier today and I was like, I'm going to go get in the cold water for 3 minutes and I know it will fix me. And it did.
Right.
And it was just like, it really works.
Yeah, I had a great session today at the pond, or I should say lake. Um, I just rolled up and I was just like, here we go. And just like went right in, just like trudged in, went out for a swim. It was cold as shit. But usually, I stand around and like go on my phone but no, I was like, I'm here. This water looks nice. Let's do it. And
Mm. Mm-hmm.
the other thing was it was kind of like cold and windy outside. So it was kind of like, all right, let's get this over with. I don't want to stand in this wind. I want to go in
Mm-hmm.
the water.
Yeah, that can make it easier. That was my situation today. It was super windy, and I was like, "All right, we're just going right in." Like, enough of this dilly dallying. And I think we
Right.
even mentioned this. I don't know if this was the last podcast or just one of our other conversations, but just kind of the state that I'm familiar with in the mornings of like, am I going to get on my yoga mat and do the things which will make this an amazing day and me an amazing human, or am I just going to dick around for a little while and before I do that, and like just get in there. Like if it's easier if I just get into a cold shower first, like that starts the whole process. It's easier if I actually just sit down first. But there's kind of this, I don't know if it's the little play of the mind or something, but something wants me to delay that process so that it can survive and it
The
can continue.
resistance. It's that
It's
resistance.
the resistance. Yeah, I
I
guess it
felt
is.
that this morning, like, I just lie in my bed and I use it. Like, if I wake up a little bit early, I'll just lie there and I'm not sleeping. I'm not really awake either. I'm just kind of lying there, just like, I don't have to get up quite yet. And then I just lie there and I look at the clock, and then I lie there and then all of a sudden it's like, I'm just like wasting my time. And I'm like kind of going into this like loser mode. Like, I don't want to get up. And it's like, and then I just thought about this morning, like I'm so lucky, like in the position that I'm in, that I don't have to get up and go to an employment job. Like, God forbid I forsake these opportunities before me. Like, get out of your bed, like right now. Like, this is just so silly. Like, I cannot just lie here and do nothing. And it's like, I remember this girl in the uh online community that I'm in. She's like saying like, how do I get out of a funk? Any advice for getting out of a funk? I was traveling a lot. I came back from traveling, and then you kind of like get depressed. Like, that can happen sometimes. And people are like, oh, listen to your body, like, kind of like it'll pass, like stuff like that. And I was the only person who said like kind of what we were just talking about. Like, you really have to like overcome this resistance and say like, all right, I've had 2 weeks of downtime. Enough's enough. No more excuses. Like, I'm getting back to like being alive.
Mm.
And one of the things that she said was like, I have like a sprained wrist, so I can't do yoga. And I'm like, no, that is an excuse. Like,
Yoga is not something that just happens on the mat, by the way.
right.
It's like,
So
a lot of people have, that excuse. Either it's like, I can't do yoga because wrist. I can't do
right.
exercise because knee or whatever.
if
And it's
if they
like,
recorded
sure.
themselves saying that and then like listen to it, it's like they would see like, oh, these are just excuses. But it's hard, like when the excuses are in your head, they're so
Mm-hmm.
convincing.
Yeah. Well,
It's
you are
so
the most convincing person to yourself.
right.
That is just the truth.
I was the
Nope.
only person who stepped up to tell her these are excuses. You know, you need to kind of stop doing
Yeah.
that.
I think it's so worth noticing that we are always, every one of us, engaged in a dialogue with ourselves. And we don't always notice that
Yeah.
there's two people speaking there. And there's going to be the us that responds, and then the us that suggests the next action. Maybe that's overly simplistic, but there is, that's why like pep talks to yourself work.
Hmm.
Because if you're pep talking yourself, you're getting yourself ready to do something. And whether you think you are or not, a lot of people are giving themselves an anti pep talk all the time or a good chunk of the time. And just like, some of those thoughts you might have when you're lying in bed, just like, I don't want to get up. There's nothing good in my life to get up for. Or it's just like the bed is nicer than the world. I will stay in the bed. But if we can shift our thoughts back to gratitude, and I know sometimes that's like people, that's again an overly simplified or maybe even loaded term, but it's so important to just notice what is good and what is worthwhile and what we love, and that feeling can pull us into life very willingly. And then we're like, oh, okay, right, life,
I think
yes, I
it
want
like
that, I want life, and now I will do the things that are required to get more life.
definitely the gratitude thing is like a helpful thing, but like if you're really in a mode where you can't you're thinking of things that you're grateful for, but you can't think of that many and you're not getting like the emotional energy from that, like I think that's where like God comes into play. And
Mm.
like God is kind of like this more like a feeling that like you need to do this. Like it's very powerful to say like if you don't have anyone in your life to say like you need to do this, you need to get out of your bed, you need to go in that ice bath, you need to do the things that you promised you would do. If you don't have anyone there to say that, like if you have God, then you
Mm.
have God, and then that's very powerful.
Yeah, that's a very good point. You always have the accountability buddy of God if you want it,
Right.
uh, and it's like that can be your level of accountability, because that's a very common suggestion to the mind, even for me. It's like, who would know if I didn't do this?
Right.
It's like, if I didn't do the things that I said I was doing, who would really know? It's like, I would know. That's probably enough. But also, maybe God would know. It's
Yeah.
like,
Well,
and
and
I'm also God, so it's like
exactly. That's
they
the
would,
whole point. Is
yeah,
like God is this thing that you can't really put into words because it just gets into a confusing
yeah.
word
It
salad.
gets into a little
it,
confusing word
it
salad. You're
lives
right.
in the feeling space, and
But
like if you
yes.
can connect with God, then he can guide you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what I mean when I say that, then I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think it's good to phrase it in a way where it isn't just like this building up of like analysis, or like weighing of the scales for judgment day. Like that's so what some people think, like God is like, oh
Mm.
no, like God will know that you didn't get out of bed, and now you're more likely to be going to hell. It's like, no, you're descending into hell right now by not doing the things
Exactly
that you
right.
want to be doing. It's like you are creating a hell, living hell right here. It's like, this can be heaven, this can be hell,
Right.
and it's all within you. And that, you are very much intimately involved in the creation of which one of those things is your life.
Yeah, I think the common story is like if you sin, you go to hell when you die, but if you
Hmm.
sin, you go to hell right
Right
now.
now, you go out immediately.
Right.
Because you will be tormented by the thing, especially if you're a person of any conscience. Then you'll be like, damn, I shouldn't have done that thing. And it's like, and now you got to clean up your side of the street and right that wrong, or begin to do enough good things that you can, balance that out within your own estimation, because you are the arbiter of justice for yourself, and you will hold yourself accountable for things that you have done incorrectly. And either that, or you'll just find yourself wanting to get obliterated or drunk or high to pretend that
Right.
that's not true. And that's kind of a
Exactly.
hell
You're
in and of
like
itself.
one way or another, like it ain't gonna go well if live a sin ridden lifestyle. Um, you may think like you may rob and steal and you know watch porn and commit adultery and do all kinds of crazy shit and hurt somebody, and you may think this feels great, but it don't last long.
Mm-hmm. there's going to be something that creeps up, and that's a feeling that you're going to want to try and get away from, and then you're going to need to develop a way of getting away from that feeling, which is not fun.
Yeah, and you might just spend the rest of your life or all of eternity, uh, just like yeah, running from the devil
Yeah,
who
and
lives
then
inside you.
you also miss out on the ability to really be authentically seen and received by another person and to be honest in that communication. And that is incredibly worthwhile, to just actually bare your soul before another human and to be received in fullness by that human, and like authentically relate and authentically
Right.
communicate and be honest with that person. And it's like that is something that a lot of people don't think they know they need, or they don't think they know they want that much. But once they have it, they're like, oh, right, this is very important. And this is impossible if I'm living this sort of uh, selfish lifestyle that prioritizes my experience over others.
Yeah, there's definitely like something to be said for like writing down or like just like coming clean, basically like opening up the closet full of skeletons for the world to see.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like one of the most difficult things to do, but I think like low key, it's like what everyone's yearning for.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see other people doing it and just, they call it like being vulnerable, um, it's like everyone like loves to see that. Like
Mm-hmm.
it, yeah.
Yeah, it's universally recognized as something which is good. They're just like, oh, right, this is good. Yeah, and I guess what I'm talking about maybe even goes further beyond that. That's probably where it starts. That's like the unburdening of the stuff. But then once the stuff has been unburdened, then you're just here. And then you just get to be a human who is like, you're not, it's not just wallowing or expressing all of the garbage anymore. Now it's just a pure enjoyment of the life state. And ideally, you're getting to share that with another person too, who's getting to really see and experience you, the real you, and you get to see and experience the real you. And that's kind of what life at its best is, at least for me.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I love I love this idea of like attunement that I was learning about the other day. It was like humans like kind of feed off each other's energy in a way, and like um life's like life's not going to be great if you don't have anybody else's like energy, like if you're not feeding off of other people around you. And
Mm,
yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons that like humans will always serve one another. Like robots really can't replace us because humans can really only feed off like other humans for the most part, and maybe like other organic biological life, like maybe we can like feed off like our dog's energy, something like that. But really I think you need like a human to really tune into their frequency. It just makes it so
mm,
much easier. So yeah, I think that's like one of the values that we like a leader provides, is like they set the frequency for other people to tune into.
that is very well put. Yeah, that's probably one of the best things that a human can do in a leadership capacity, is actually just to have a vibe that is worth partaking of. And other people are like, yes, this feels good. Like, okay, I'm on board with this. And now we do this. And we all get to kind of like drop into that place of ourself, which is some similar expression of what we're feeling from this other person. And ideally, it feels really good to do that. Or perhaps in some instances of people where they're rallying around something, there's some sort of catharsis there. It's like they're all angry about the same thing, or they're all like outraged about the same thing, and then that's like addressing some core need that they have or some emotion. But that's still, that's not going to be satisfying to stay in forever.
Right.
That ideally you're looking for some sort of outcome or resolution to that situation, and then it ends and becomes something else. But I think in its best form, you're following someone who just is putting out really good energy, and you're like, yeah, okay, here we go.
Right.
We can stay in this as long as we want.
It kind of just comes down to like, um are they like confident, and like do they have conviction around their energy, and like maybe they don't even need to be persuasive. They literally just need to be like high energy, high conviction, whether it's good or bad or whatever. People are like, it's just hard to set your frequency. You don't know which one to set it at and how to get it there. And it's like, I'll just tune into what this guy's doing. He's high energy, high conviction. It's a lot easier just to tune into his.
Yeah, well, for me, that was so helpful, especially coming out of addiction, was just to tune into Tommy Rosen's frequency. And it was just like, okay, he's got something which is very helpful to me right now. And it's like, I'm just
It's
going
like,
to tune into that. I'm going to kind of make him my mentor in this energetic way and just kind of model myself after what he's up to. And that's super helpful for a while. And then eventually I'm not him. And I need to, differentiate myself in the meaningful ways that must be expressed from what he's up to. But in this sort of course correctional capacity, it's so valuable to have someone to model yourself after like that.
because like if there can be moments where like you forget your why, you forget why you're alive, you just don't feel that
Mm-hmm.
passion. And if you don't know like why should I be happy? Like why like you can fall into nihilism real quick. But if there's someone around you, like, look, I don't know why I'm here, but I'm just gonna tune into this other guy's frequency because why not? And
This
that's good
feels a whole
enough.
lot better than what I was doing a minute ago. So
Right. It's like,
if none of it matters, then why don't I just
look, yeah,
choose the one that actually
like,
feels great? So
right. That's the thing with like nihilists. It's like, why are nihilists sad? Like, you have
yeah,
no
really, they
reason to
should
be
be
sad.
happy. Yeah, it's like you think with nihilism would just go right to hedonism, and then like, but the thing about hedonism is that it's a short improvement and then a down
Right.
downslide. But kind of what we're getting into with this whole yogic and consciousness and like Kundalini oriented like nutrition lifestyle is that you're giving yourself a rise in energy, a rise in good feelings, or an expansion of consciousness, and that isn't coupled with some later crash. It just has like a gentle leveling off or a gentle return to whatever your baseline is, as opposed to this like roller coaster of getting high, crashing, like uh,
Right.
acting out addictively, a sort of frequency.
Yeah, I definitely prefer like the lesser of the two roller coasters. Like, I think everyone should like ride the roller coaster, the big one for a little bit, like just to see.
Yeah,
And
there's probably
the
something to be
Amish
said for
the
that.
Amish have like an extreme form of this called the Rumspringa, especially the traditional like real by the book old school Amish communities. Like they go like full strict mode until you're like I want to say 15, 16, and then like from like 16 to 18 it's just no rules. It's like go do whatever. And so they go, all the Amish people like get together in like 400-person like farm parties and they like smoke crack and have sex. And it's just like wild. And then they just have to go back to like strict mode, and they kind of like know the pitfalls of that roller coaster lifestyle, and so
Mm.
they're not really tempted to go back to that. And also they get pregnant during that time, and now they need to sort that situation out and get married and take care of the kids and all that, so they get it out of their system. But for me, other Amish communities, they don't do it like that either. There's just specific ones. They say no, we're not going to do that extreme of a roller coaster.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, you're right. There's definitely something to be said for riding that roller coaster to completion, because it typically will take you to a rather dark place that you're like, oh, I don't want this, and this is how I got here. So maybe I actually don't want to be involved in a good chunk of what I'm doing right now, and I gotta find something else. Maybe I can lean into some of the more wholesome elements of life, which feel less like they're less charged, but they're also just really good of themselves and they don't result in such terrible shit.
Yeah, yeah. It's like I'd rather have like it's tough. Like sometimes I feel like I want to have like this great epic life, or it's not even worth it. But that's not really true. Like if I have like a pretty good life, like that's pretty incredible in and of itself. Like just to even not live a shitty life is like an incredible success.
That you're right. That's a huge success. But I also do want to encourage you not to stop there. We
Right.
don't want to fall into the trope of like life has to be this big picture that I'm holding up, it's like it doesn't. It's your life, but it can be anything as long as you're happy with it. But yeah, don't hold anything back. Like live fully, and by that I don't necessarily mean like go smoke crack. I mean like it doesn't have to be that, because as we've mentioned before, that isn't actually probably an expression of like a great life either. That's just going to lead you to a lesser expression of life. It might feel great very momentarily, and then it will probably result in a life that you're
Right.
less happy with. So just keep building the blocks of the life just feeling better and better and fuller and fuller, and like, yeah, now we're doing it. And then you can wake up every day just like psyched to get out of bed, and there's none of this like, am I going to get up? It's like, I'm getting up. Like, this is good. I can't wait to get out there.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to like, work and relationships, and like the relationships part on, like, honestly, I can't even speak to that much, but like, I mean, stuff like this podcast, like this is like something that I get excited for. And you know, okay, there's a lot of podcasts out there, but let's see where this goes. And
Yeah, it can go
uh,
anywhere. And
yeah,
it
I
feels
love it.
really good to be having these conversations. And I hopefully it feels good for people listening to it too. But I know just as we're talking, and I know it's happening to me and I see it happening through you, just kind of this expression of life. And it's like, oh, right, I'm excited about this. Like, this is good information. And
Right.
I didn't even necessarily know this information before it's coming out of my mouth. And now we all know it together. But it's like, it's fun to be in that creative process.
Yeah, you're creating something. I really think creation, at least for me, is like the backbone of like my existence. And
Mm,
like I encourage everyone to start a podcast. Like there's I'm not worried about competitors or there's too many podcasts. Like everyone's gonna get something out of this. And yeah, do it. Let's go
yeah,
start
do
a
it,
podcast.
and you will benefit from doing it, and you will become more of yourself in so doing, hopefully, as long as you're not putting on some face that you think people want to hear. Like me and my voice, my seductress voice.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I don't know how long you can like keep that up. I suppose if you, I guess my theory is that if you keep it up for long enough, then your voice really does change.
It just
Uh,
might. Yeah.
yeah. Like I know Elizabeth Holmes was kind of she. I don't know if you've heard. Have you heard of Elizabeth Holmes?
No.
She's I think she's in jail now. She started a company that maybe she had good intentions in the beginning, but it got out of control. She was very good at raising money, but not good at building a product.
Mm.
So she just raised a lot of money and didn't build a product. So but the media kind of like made her this big star, and like she wanted to live up to expectations, so she kind of lied and then raised more money based on the lies. And so, anyways, what she would do to raise money, one of her tactics was she would talk to, older men, and she would talk in a really deep voice. And it was this bizarre, like blonde young woman talking in this deep voice. And that was for some reason attractive to them. And that would help her with her business moves. Um, but anyways, she did this voice for like 12 years. And like that just became her voice, and it's just like mind blowing when you hear it. And they have video clips of her. There's only like 2 video clips of her like back in the day talking in like her normal female high pitched voice, and then all the other videos are her talking like this, and it's like whoa. And she did it for 12 years, and I'm sure that her literally her voice box has changed because of it.
Her voice box changed, or her neural patterning changed, and it's just like, oh,
Right.
when you go to make a sound, you want this one, and these are the grooves that you're using in your brain again and again, and it's like, okay, we're going to help you create what you want, and through habit, here it is.
Yeah,
But yeah, it is very cool, and it does, do I want a different voice? Maybe I do. Maybe I should start thinking about that.
it's so meta when you start thinking about it. Like, okay, you can change yourself. We know that. Okay, now who do you want to be? And it's like, if you're kind of a different person every day, which version of you gets to decide who you want to be in the future?
Mm.
So you kind of have to almost like take a vote. Like,
Yeah, you got to keep coming back to that decision. You got
right,
to pull the various parts of you. And that's actually partly why it's so valuable to do things like setting your intentions from stillness after a morning practice,
right,
after you do the Kundalini, after you do like whatever the breath work is, you clear the junk out. So there's not just some expression of you, it's the stillness that resides behind it all. And then you're making decisions from that place. And then you're like, okay, this feels more valid than before. Maybe not, maybe it's still not 100% of you, but it's probably like a greater percentage of you, the authentic you, than just whatever you happen to wake up as that day.
right. Like people with high conviction, like I'll bring up Elon Musk, one of the people that I look to for, guidance and inspiration because he's just has so many good ideas. I always think like he's so high conviction with going to Mars, with building new transportation. Like, how many times does he come back to these convictions that he has? Is
Mm.
this like he just one day decided we need to go to Mars, we need to build this rocket, and then that's it? He like never revisits that, or is it like every month he like, is this the right move, or is it like because it has to be, it can't be every day that he's like revisiting these convictions, but
Mm.
it also can't be only one time that he like, you know,
Well, perhaps it could be daily, but it might not be daily in like a any sort of decision making capacity. It might be daily in a reaffirmation capacity, where it's like, wake up, tune in, going to Mars. All right, let's do it. And
right.
then it's just like, and then he gets to go into the day with the full conviction of going to Mars. And so there's actually is a little bit of intentional re-amplification of something which he finds to be important. But you're right, I'm not quite sure how often that decision comes into question at all.
I guess yeah, there's so many decisions that so many big decisions that he makes with like the direction of his life and like how much time do you invest in this and like what's worth doing, and it's just amazing when people can like sit down, clear their mind, think very cogently about it, come to a conclusion, and then trust that conclusion that they came to for weeks, months, or
Mm-hmm.
years. And they don't necessarily have to go through all the logic steps that they went through.
Mm.
They just trust their prior self.
Yeah, yeah, you trust that you had it together enough to make the decision the first time. And you're just
Right.
like, okay. That is some self-trust. Or
And
yeah, or it's trust in your own divinity, or the realness of your connection to your intuitive wisdom or to all wisdom in that moment. Like those are, it's very easy for me to trust certain decisions that were made from that place of stillness because they
mm,
felt really real in my whole body. And I'm like, okay, this one's real. And then later on, even if there's some like quibbling of the mind, it was like, was that the right decision? It's like, well, I know you're not, because you're just a little like thought I'm having about it. Whereas that was actually like a full body feeling that conveyed the truth of that to me.
I think the process for decision making is underrated. And like, I maybe you can resonate with this, or maybe I'm just crazy. But today I was like booking flights, and I'm like probably overthinking about it. I thought about it for like 45 minutes. Am I booking the flights on the right days at the right time for the best price? Is everything going to work out? And at the end of the day, like you just don't really know. Like there's a lot of variables going on there, and I should have just thought about it for 10 minutes and then booked the flights. I thought about it for way too long, and then when I went to book the flights, I hit purchase flight, and it was like error. And I'm like, oh, this is God telling me I'm doing it wrong. Like, what am I missing here? I'm like, nope, nothing. I need you to just press the book button and move on. I press book flights, and it's like, your session expired. I'm like, God damn it.
2 hours ago.
Yeah, like I must be doing something wrong. Like something in the universe doesn't want me to book these flights. But and then I think to myself, Chris, you're being ridiculous. You've thought about this for 2 hours now. You need to just book these flights. The price is gonna go up. And it's like, oh my God, I just get bogged down. It'd be so much easier if someone is there. They'd just be like, dude, just book the flights. I'll be like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like there's room for both. There's room for both, and that's kind of what makes it a little bit tricky to full commit to stuff like that. Like I myself lean much more into, there are flights to be booked. I'm booking the flights. There we go. No dallying. Whereas my girlfriend is very much like, let's look at every available option. Let's spend an afternoon to explore every option and do them all. And in so doing, we probably do find the best outcome. But also, that's kind of a taxing process for her. And then she's like exhausted at the end of doing that. And it's like, did you really need to put yourself through that for the discount of
Save $18.
yeah, whatever it was? But in her mind, it's not necessarily a discount. Like some she's looking at like, where do we stay? Where is like the Airbnb that we're staying at? And like, where is like the, she's creating the experience and she's involved in that process of creation, and she's not settling for a life that is just mediocre. She's actually curating a life which is amazing. So in that
Right.
way, I do appreciate that part of it. And yeah, I think there is some balance. And then sometimes it's up to me to just step in and be like, book. It's done.
That's what I'm saying, man. Like humans, we come in pairs, I think, and you need the yin and the yang there to really get stuff done well. And it's tough. You can like a person can be both. Like you can do all that thinking one day and overanalyze it, and then just come back the next day and be that different person and just say,
Mm.
okay, book. Um, so, but it's hard. It's better with multiple people. Like I'm good at making decisions. I'm good at thinking clearly when other people are involved. Like I'm better at making decisions for a group than I am for myself. Just
Mm.
for myself. When it's just me, I just get way too weird about it. Um, well, yeah, basically the situation is this: I'm going out there for a wedding, and it's like, do I want to like if I'm gonna fly all the way out there, I can't just go for 2 days. I need to like do some other stuff, but I'm not exactly sure who's gonna be there and what other people want to do and how long do I want to stay. So there's just a lot of unknowns. And when that's the case, I mean, you just gotta kind of go down the middle with like don't book too long, don't book too short. Just do like a medium amount, I think is the right move. And yeah, it's just now that I'm saying it out loud, it's just so simple. I should have booked it yesterday.
You just needed me here. You just needed someone to witness you in it, so it wasn't just the thoughts looping on
Right.
themselves.
Exactly.
Yep.
As soon as
Yep.
I can see myself through someone else's eyes, it's like, oh, just book the
Yeah,
flight.
it's right. Yeah, we're stronger together. We really do need each other in this life. And I'm not specifically talking about you and I, but just as people who need, yeah, that just the simple mirroring process that took place right now is so valuable, so that it isn't just us looping on like insanely over the same treads again and again. And it's like, no, like it has been said, and now like I'm not I'm not so detached from reality that I'll just say it again a second time. It's like in my mind, I would say it a second time, but out loud, I'll probably just going to say it once. And then once it's been said, it's like now we need to work with what has been said and do something with it.
Yeah. And the other thought that helped me was like, this trip's not about me. Like it's about the wedding, right? I'm going
Mm-hmm.
there for these people. That's all I need to do for it to be like mission accomplished. It's not about me. Just go to the wedding and that's it. Mission
Yeah,
accomplished.
yeah, yeah.
And
And that actually
good.
that simplifies so many decisions. As soon as it's not about you, it becomes easier. And you said the same thing in the group setting. It's like it's easier to make decisions for the group. And it's like that's part of what seva or selfless service is, karma yoga. It's like that's kind of what it's meant to be, is that when you're taking care of someone else's stuff, you're not in your own stuff anymore. And that's actually very liberating. And it's just like,
Right.
oh, this is easy. Life is easy because I'm not really so attached to the outcomes of other people's things
Yeah,
as I
it's
am to
funny.
my own.
Like sometimes I think like we can fall into this trap of like thinking like we're not doing a great job taking care of ourselves, therefore we can't take care of other people.
Mm-hmm.
When in fact the opposite is true. It's easier to take care of other people
It is.
sometimes, and through
Yeah.
that, we take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a balance there as well. But you're right. But yeah, like they especially for people who are just living in isolation and their life isn't really going that well, like which could have described a certain portion of my life, it's like in that instance I should really become involved in someone else's affairs and help them with what they're
Right.
doing. And then that would demonstrate to me, just like you said, that I actually do have the capacity. I just wasn't giving that capacity to myself for whatever reason, like lack of self-worth or just bad habit formation or whatever it is. But that capacity clearly exists, and then I can start giving myself all that goodness too.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And yeah, it's one thing like to do it like a job, like an employment job where like I don't know, but I feel like more can come from it, like from like something else, like taking care of people, not necessarily just like bringing them food at a restaurant, although that's
Yeah.
not really a
Yeah.
bad thing or anything, but like, can you do something that's a little more meaningful than just like
Yeah.
small talk?
A little bit more intimate than that. Yeah. Although
Right.
that of itself might actually be a good place to start. And then you lean
Right.
into the other part too. I think this is a good spot to stop. I think we have done it. And maybe we start to wrap it up. I need to pee. Maybe I come back and when we
Yeah.
close it, let's go with that for first.
Sure.
And we're back.
So I guess the way that people do like 4 hour podcasts is they do breaks.
Yeah, you would need them.
Yeah.
Although,
So
yeah, as I was saying during our break, it does feel like it gets easier as you go. There's just kind of a flow or a rhythm to it. I mean, there's the human limitations of exhaustion and hunger and bodily requirements, but the actual conversation itself almost gets easier as it goes if you're with the right person. And that's partly why this podcast sprang into being, is that we seem to be able to talk to each other with some degree of ease and freedom. So it just
yeah,
happens rather effortlessly.
a lot of those Joe Rogan podcasts where the guest is interesting, but maybe they're not on podcasts very often. And I usually just like skip the first 20 to 40 minutes and then get right
Until they're
to the
warmed
meat
up.
of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I was just thinking about metrics and like what metrics do people use, like, and we can kind of get caught up in like the metrics around views and likes and duration and like dollars obviously is a big one. Like if I said to someone in our North American culture, like, what's your worth? They
Mhm.
would think dollars. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, my assets minus my debts is my worth. And it's just like, well, and like the government tracks like GDP and like they're always
Mhm.
trying to like increase GDP. It's like, well, I wonder what like some better metrics might be. And one of the things that I thought of was the number of like communal meals per day, or, like
Mm.
some metrics around like how many people are eating food together.
Yeah, like let's track more meaningful metrics here. It's like
Right.
how long was your most recent hug? Like
Oh, that's a good one.
how many seconds
Hugs
until
per
you
day and
felt you
average
needed to break
duration of
away?
hug.
Yeah. How many seconds spent hugging? How many
Yeah.
seconds spent once you broke through the uncomfortable part of hugging where you're like, I'm not sure I should be here. It's like, okay, I should
Yeah.
be here. Yeah.
What's funny is I think about that a lot. Like obviously I've been involved in many hugs in my life, but I keep hearing that like beyond some number of seconds, it's like the whole thing changes. And I'm like, dude, I don't think I've ever hugged for more than like maybe, I don't know. I just can't think of like it's not something I do regularly, so it just feels like dang,
Both
I'm
people
missing
kind of have to
out.
be on board for it, or one person has to cajole the other person. I actually did this to a woman who's a really good friend of my girlfriend's at a social function. I don't know, she was just talking about how she doesn't hug very frequently or something, and
Hmm.
I was just like, all right, well, we need to address this right now. And she's like, oh, I'm not sure about that. I'm like, oh yes, I can be sure that for both of us. Here we go. And then I just like brought her into a big embrace, and she was just like, I'm like, no, we're just getting to the good part. Don't worry. And then she was like squirming, and I'm like, no, it's okay. Like, and
Two
then
more seconds.
it's coming, it's coming, I promise. And like my girlfriend was just watching and like laughing because she knows this person's personality, and it was very funny for her to be involved in that situation. And yeah, and eventually we did get there, and her response was like, actually, yeah, that was good. But obviously uncomfortable to get to that point for her.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm uncomfortable just hearing about this.
It's an uncomfortable thing for most people. But I was listening to a podcast of this one guy at one point, and he said something of like hugging is literally bringing yourself into the sunshine of another human being. And he was just talking about how like each of our mitochondria are these like incredible energy production
Right.
things, and they're at least in his estimation, he was like they're creating energy much like the sun is creating energy. And so like when we actually hug, we're like coming right into like that energy expression of another person. So it's much more than just physical contact. It's actually like an energetic exchange, and there is something very nourishing in that. And yeah, it's kind of core to the human experience that we actually make contact with one another physically, or come into very close proximity, or spend time in close proximity, and hug and look into each other's eyes and hear each other's voice and experience their presence. It's like, it's so undervalued in the world that we live in now. I mean, maybe, well, by certain people, just because through the convenience of what we're doing right now, we don't physically need to be in the same place in order to communicate, to have some degree of communication. But certain things
I
are
love
lost.
what we're doing now. Like it's such a double-edged sword. Like we wouldn't be able to do this podcast if we didn't have Zoom, right?
No, it would
Like
never happen.
chances are I probably wouldn't really be able to find someone like in my local city that I would have like a great podcast with. It would be very difficult for me to do that. I mean, perhaps I could find someone, but chances are, I'm gonna find someone better if I have Zoom and I can Zoom with someone in Canada who is a great podcast co-host. So, Zoom is great. It's so convenient. You don't have to commute. It's just so great to have Zoom, but at the same time, now we're missing out on probably a few. There's a lot of podcast hosts who will only do in-person podcasts. So
yeah, well, maybe we get there eventually.
yeah, that would be cool.
We get a
I really
studio
think
somewhere.
like the internet is a great tool for connecting people, and then like, but it should move in the direction of real life.
Yeah, I love that. Yes, don't let internet just breed more internet, but let internet
Right.
be the connectivity that then pulls us together into actual physical proximity.
Yeah. So usually you have like the beach background behind you, but today it's just your apartment.
It's just my apartment, but also the sun is like the evening sun is on my face, so I angled myself this way because it's just kind of nice.
Okay.
But it
Yeah.
also just kind of, you just see like a bit of a disheveled apartment here, so it's not really as pleasant. But I like sitting here in the evening hours when the sun is just passing through this window, because it just like feels nice for me, and it actually looks kind of nice.
Yeah, you're glowing right now.
Yeah, that's a glow. And if you just wait, if you were still on this call in like an hour, you're gonna get like the changing colors of like the sunset, and then my face becomes something else entirely. So the people in my meditation will get to check that out.
Okay, maybe I'll join.
Yeah, sure. Come on by.
Sweet. How do I join the meditation?
It's the same link we're using now. So, but it's
Right
just
on.
it's
So
in an
just
hour
go
and a
on
half.
like Meetup. Is that how people find it?
That's right. Yeah, for anyone listening, it is on Meetup. It's in a group called Creativity, Divinity, and Wellbeing Gatherings, and it's a Kundalini meditation with me. It's every Wednesday night at 4 o'clock Pacific.
So that just means you sit there and do nothing, right?
Pretty much. No, it's actually the exact opposite. Most people's idea of meditation is Buddhist meditation, which is just like sit and do nothing, which is great. But what we're doing is much more involved than that. We're doing hand postures. We're doing a set breath pattern. Sometimes we do mantra out loud. Sometimes we do mantra in our head. And all of that is just ways of making it more involved, giving you something to do. It has value in addition to that, but mostly for people who are very new, it's actually much more accessible than just sit and do nothing and
Right.
try to deal with your thoughts. It actually
Yeah, I could
gives you
not do that.
something to occupy your mind with, and then before you know it, you've entered parasympathetic nervous system. You've become very relaxed. You're breathing better. You're feeling better, and it's over before you know it.
Yeah, it's fun sometimes, and then also sometimes it's just like a challenge. Like, can I actually do this process for the 5 minutes or the 11 minutes? Like, it's just like it's like rubbing your stomach and patting your head. Like, can I do this? It is possible. I just need to like do it. So
Yeah, yeah,
and
and
then
yeah.
sometimes it's
That's
just fun to like just say the words out loud too. So you can't lose with this.
no, you absolutely can't, and it's so worth doing. It's just one of those things that the only barrier to entry is that it's kind of strange and weird. So it's like, if you're okay with doing something that's a little bit weird for a few minutes, you are going to benefit immensely from it. And I mean, if you're already listening to this podcast, you must be up for things that are weird and worthwhile. So
Yeah, if you
this
made
is
it this far.
this is a natural segue. If you're 2 hours in here at this, then there's nothing stopping you from doing a little Kundalini meditation here.
Right on. Anything else you want to bring up today?
Just a call to action for people to embrace the weird in their life. Don't think of it as something which is off-putting, but think of it as something which is an invitation into what your life could be, something new.
Right.
So a
It's
bit,
worthwhile.
yeah, something which offers you a little bit more, a little bit access, reveals more of you, reveals more of your energy. Um, Document
Yeah.
the things in your life which turn out to be kind of a weird occurrence. Lean into the weird,
Yeah,
and
lean into the weird. Can you be a little curious about what you can learn from that weirdness?
mhm,
You know, rather than dismiss it, just, hold on a second. What can I learn here? How does this connect to other things?
mhm. Yeah, be investigative of your own experience. So just have a cookie cutter life where you're just emulating the things that you've seen in movies or the things that other people are up to. Let your life become uniquely your own. And the weirdness is kind of a little bit of a guidepost into how to let that happen. It's like if you're exploring the weirdness in your life, then you are actually curating that relationship between you and the universe and divinity and your own unique path. So keep leaning in. There's more to love.
Awesome, man. Well, it's another great pod today.
I
And
agree.
yeah, let's do
Thanks
another
everyone
one
for
next
listening,
week.
and we'll
Yeah,
see you
thank you
next time.
guys. Good night.